How we doing, Bear Nation? We are back again with another episode of the Bear Necessities podcast. I am your host, Rob Napoli, and today, a long-awaited, in fact, we just had like a 25-minute catch-up before we even started the pod. My friend and an amazing, now number one best-selling author, Kate DiLeo from Kate DiLeo, she's a brand architect. She's an accidental brand strategist, which we're going to get into, like how you accidentally became a brand strategist, running your own company where you've worked with over 200 organizations to craft brands that bring more prospects to the table, more clicks, more customers. You help stand out above all the noise. So I'm excited to get into this. Kate, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today. I mean, first off, I love in the world of post COVID how you and I met in general through that season, and we've stayed friends for how many years now. And so now to be on the podcast, it is an honor. I'm
I
excited.
love it. I still can't like believe and how we met and like still being friends and like the fact that we still haven't had a chance to like actually meet in real life. Like that's like
I know
coming soon. I have to
it
feel.
is. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. It will. I mean,
Hopefully you
and this
come
is
out
the,
to New York soon, or like I'll be back in Minnesota or something.
I know,
Mm.
totally.
So yeah. So I was thinking a lot about where I wanted to start with this, but um, you just wrote a book, and I want to get into your accidental brand story, but we were talking about this pre-show, and I always like to ask the question, like, how does now that the book is out, how does it feel to be done with the book?
Great. It's amazing. I think that writing a book is never something I wanted to do. If you had asked me like 2 years ago, say, Kate, you should write a book, I would say that's the dumbest idea ever. Like, who has time for that? That is not cool. But honestly, what's funny, Rob, is like this book kind of wrote itself. I wrote it in a single week over the holidays, and I'll tell you though, there was a lot of takeout pizza and a lot of Cabernet to make this book happen in that week. All right, there was a lot of takeout pizza. But the book came to fruition, and I do have to say it is a huge feeling of just almost relief and excitement to know that I was able to finally take the process that I've done with so many clients over the years, right? And help write that down in just a tiny little 100-page book to say, okay, here's your practical steps from A to Z of what do you actually need to do to build a brand that wins more work. And so that's really what the book it is. It's not, there's strategy, there's theory, but this is supposed to be a how-to guide.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's what I loved about when I read it. Part of it was like, oh yeah, like it took me back to like marketing 101, took me back to my master's thesis. Like there's like different parts of like took me back to like when I was running as the head of brand for a company. And it took me back to all these little things. And the two things that really stood out to me is that there's a lot of business books out there that are like 300-page strategy guides, all these big things. And that's not what anyone has time and attention for. It's like, here's the book right here. Look at this, Muting the Megaphone. I love it. Go check it out. But it's short, it's simple, it's easy to read. It's what? Not even 100 pages, right? So, like, when you get through it and as you read it, it's so practical. And for many of us, especially in my audience as a founder, you're working on branding, but you're working on 15 other things.
Yes.
Let's not
Oh my God.
overcomplicate it. Like I talk about that in my book, The Social Soul. I talk about with all my sales stuff. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Go with the basics and create a strong brand that doesn't take up all your time. And so that's what I really loved
That's
about
right.
it. And I was really excited about when I got to read it. It was just so much fun too. Because I know you well enough. I was
Yeah,
like
you
reading
do.
with like you reading to me, like you were like narrating the book in my head as I'm reading it because I know you well enough. It was kind of crazy.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, the thing that and it's so funny because here I wrote a book, and I don't read a lot of books because they're so long and they say the same thing over and over again. And you're like, I do not have time to read 300, 500-page strategy books. Don't die. Um, but the thing is I think at the end of the day, like what we crave as marketers, as leaders in sales, as just entrepreneurs, is we want practicality. At the end of the day, it's like, give me my 1, 2, 3. And that's what excites me is whenever I can give somebody the 1, 2, 3 of what you need to do to go build a brand. Great, please go do it. Just go stick with the basics. The things about branding is that this is not unicorn rocket science. This is practical stuff. And your brand is a practical and tactical revenue generation weapon for your company. And that's what I want people to understand with this book is like you need to get back to the understanding that your brand is your path of least resistance to revenue.
I love that. And so we're going to come back to the book, but you spent the last decade plus in this
Mm-hmm.
world of branding, and you always like to say that you're an accidental brand strategist. And I think you went
Yes.
to school for like, was it anthropology or something? Like, how did you
Yeah.
fall into this like branding world? Like, what? Tell me how we got here and
Okay.
how you fell
Well,
into this world.
so I call myself an accidental brand strategist because I had no intention of going into this, just like you said. I really did intend to pursue a PhD in linguistic anthropology, Rob. And linguistic anthropology is actually the study of how language shapes culture and then how culture shapes language. So what's funny is I haven't like deviated too far from that original love, have I? But the thing was is that when the market crashed, here I was about to start graduate work, right? And I had a professor that honestly told me, I just remember this conversation. He said, "Listen, I love you. It's great that, you want to pursue this, but we don't know where this field of science is going to be. I actually think that you should leave academia, Kate, and go get a job and go pay off your undergrad debt and then come back after a few years when you have some real world experience, right?" So I ended up leaving. And, by the way, of course, my Italian father was like, "Yes, please leave my house. Like, go get a job and leave my house," right? Like, he was like, "Go." So I go, and here's what I want you to know. I fell into branding out of pure necessity because I took a sales job. I took a sales job cold calling IT professionals to sell them $2,500 training classes. That is stupid because IT people hate to be called and they hate to be sold to, right?
100%.
So like here I am. Oh my God, Rob, come on, we've all been there, right? Smile and dial 40 to 60 dials a day. And they put you through 2 weeks of training and they give you your scripts and they subscribe all your leads in the database to a drip marketing campaign, and it was crap. So I had a sink or swim moment, and I had to step back for a second and ask myself in that job, hold on, if I'm on the other end of this call, what would I want to know to want to have a conversation? And all I did is I decided to just throw out the scripts, unsubscribe everybody from the campaigns, and I was going to do it my way. And I called these people up and I just said, "Hi, my name's Kate. This is what we do at this company. This is how we solve your problem. And this is how we're different." Boom, boom, boom. And then I shut up. It worked. I got emails back. I got the calls back. All of a sudden, I was running a $1.2 million a year quota and crushing it over 100%. That was it for me. I really didn't realize that was a light bulb of Rob of understanding. Screw the complex sales scripts. This is about a provocative and simple and heart point brand pitch that's going to compel somebody to go, "Okay, that's interesting. I want to have a conversation." So, long story short, I ended up getting recruited out to go build brand in the agency world and then in corporate America. And then I was a side hustler. I was building brands on the side for years, having kids, got a young family. And then 3 years ago, I ended up taking this to be my full-time thing. But now it's almost 300 companies I've worked with globally.
That's that's absolutely wild. It's so it's so interesting because I ran a sales as a service company, right? I help companies enter the market
Yeah.
and run their outbound. And one of the things that was always fun to do for me was writing scripts, like writing the email cadences and writing the scripts they
Yeah.
would use. And I'd always say, "Hey, I need you to like give me the meat and potatoes of your business first, and I'll kind of refine it." And it was always fun for me because I got to have some creativity to it. And but I'd always be like taking everything out. They like write these big long things like, "This is terrible. It's all about you. There's nothing of substance here. There's nothing that makes me want to be like, yeah, I'll have a conversation with you." And then you like rip it all out and you show them saying, "What is this? Like this is it. This is how you're gonna get more meetings. This is just being genuine and authentic." And so I love that. Like
Yes.
I feel that at my core, and it's such a fun thing to do. And it's so cool that you kind of had that light bulb moment, and it kind of changed your trajectory. And now you've made such a big impact. And so I love this idea of branding, right? And there's like kind of multiple layers of branding. I talk a lot about personal brand, but there's you lay out in your book kind of three core, let's call them sections or topics. And
Yeah.
the first part of it, you talk about honing the tone. And so when
Yes.
brands come to you and it's like, "Hey, Kate, we need branding work." and you're like, okay, let's start with like the decision to hone your tone. Like, what does that look like? Like, think about most of your clients. They're coming to you because a lot of these times they've had a business that's they're doing revenue. They're probably doing at least half mil plus in
Yeah,
revenue in their home country or even
yeah.
in this market locally. And you're looking at it and you're like, whoa, let's kind of go back to the beginning. Like let's kind of hone the tone a little bit. Like, what is that process like? And more importantly, how do you get them to look at it in a way that to make it make sense, because everyone's like, oh, we're doing 1 million in revenue, like this is our brand, but we're coming to you for help. Like, how does that, like, do you ever feel that friction? How does that conversation go?
There's yes, yes. There's always friction there. I think the big thing that companies sometimes underestimate is the level of fear they have when they start a branding process. Fear of becoming something that they think they're not supposed to be, letting go of the legacy of why they created the company in the first place. Then you have founder fear syndrome, where every founder I work with is like, this is my baby. It's also my identity. There's all these layers of complex emotion when you're dealing with somebody's brand. Okay. But the thing is that when I'm sitting down with folks, what I try to help them understand is, listen, you can spend all your time and energy trying to come up with the coolest message, but if it actually doesn't sound like you and feel like you're never going to speak it. You're going to go slap a really cool message on the homepage of your website, and your salespeople will not use it. And then it's going to feel totally disconnected between sales and marketing. And there you just shot your rev ops in the foot. So, in order to prevent that, you have to actually start with phase one, which is identifying in the most practical way, how does your company and brand show up in the world? Are you funny and humorous? Are you super serious? Are you a teacher? Are you an inventor? And I use a very simple question to get people thinking about this, which is, if your brand were a person, who would you be? And I ask my clients to choose a public figure or celebrity. Are you Tom Holland, Oprah Winfrey, Anderson Cooper, Simon Sinek? The list can go on, but what we're listening for is, I want them to think about the talk track in their mind. How does Oprah sound? You know how Oprah sounds. And here's the art behind this. When you pick on a tone of voice and you stick with it, it infiltrates every part of your sales and marketing so that every sentence is actually crisp, it's clean, and it prevents this corporate
Yeah.
mumbo jumbo that happens whenever we try to write.
Yeah.
That's why tone of voice is imperative.
So I love this like question, because when we were at Hap Day, we created our Hap person. Like, who is Hap Day?
Yeah.
Because so my question to you, and the reason why we had to create it this way, is that there's two of us as co-founders, and Phil and I had very different personality types. So if you're working with a brand that has kind of a couple of different key leaders, and you're asking that question, they both might say it sounds different. So how do you get like co-founders or like brands that have multiple key leaders that are talking through this kind of on that page to define that person that is, or that kind of, who would that person be? Like, how do you get them to that point?
It's so interesting. So, one of the things that we have to help understand is that there's a difference between you as the leader versus your brand and company as a whole. And as soon as I give people permission to say, listen, you can answer this question for yourselves individually, but if we think about the brand, how your customers experience you, what's the consistent tone of voice? And then they go, oh, well, then they're going to see this side of us. Okay, so interestingly enough, founders do get really aligned on that. C-suite teams kind of go, no, this actually is who we are, isn't it? And as long as they're recognizing that they can totally have freedom to be their own persona here, but when we think about building a brand, we're just going macro level. We just want to go up a level, okay? We're not replacing you and your greatness and your personal brand. What we're trying to do is help you understand that your brand as a whole is a summation of those parts, but you have to have that really clearly defined, because if you're just leading with 3 individual awesome personal brands as founders, you actually will not have a corporate brand that's going to sell. And then you're going to have a lot of confusion in the marketplace, inability to gain partners, all of this other stuff that happens.
Yeah. I bring that up because I see this happen a lot, where so many founders are so hell bent on building their brand and not their personal. They don't realize that they're trying to build a brand on their personal brand. Like, they're trying to bring themselves into it. So like, I challenge you to build your personal brand and understand who you want to be as the leader, as Rob Napoli, as
Yes.
this person. And then now, what does your company want to do? What is the brand meant to do?
Bingo.
And then where does those two things overlap and where are they separate? So that way you can actually know that this is who I am as a person, and it's over here, and it's okay to be authentically me, and this is my business. And I see it happen kind of backwards, where it's like, oh, this is our brand, and like they're trying to put so much of themselves into the brand, and they're not letting the company brand be its unique voice, you know.
I
So that's
Here's
why I
a
asked
fun
that
piece of
question. I
how that actually
love.
works out. Okay, so get this now. This is where it gets tactical. You ready? So if you think about the job of your brand for your company, it is to do what? Sell. It's truly to get more prospects to the table. Ultimately, this is the thing that captures your audience in the first 15 to 30 seconds for them to want to get on the dang call, right? Or to take the next step. Brand is about conversions, people. Here's the thing. What that looks like tactically is having things like a tagline and a value proposition statement and differentiators that really speak to the heart pain you solve for your customer. So I want leadership teams to get aligned on that. They're like, for sure, Kate, this is the pain we solve. 100% this is how we're different. Great. Slap it on your homepage. That's your core brand messaging from a sales perspective. Now, personal branding for founders. More often than not, what I find is that they have a vision in them. And there is this sense of impact of what they want to do and how they want to change the world. In the world of branding, here's where that comes into play. Mission statement and vision statement and values. And then really strong bios on your leadership team. Now, those don't belong on a homepage of your website, but they do belong on the about page of your website. What I want founders to realize is, listen, let your brand sell, and then allow your impact section to be the platform on which you build your personal brand. So what that starts to look like is, for some of my founders, they start giving TED Talks and evangelizing over here on how they want to change the world. This is where all of a sudden you can go teach, you can start writing and guest hosting and all this other stuff. But watch how that impact stuff has a purpose. People will find you. Stay in that lane, but recognize if you try to go sell with that, you've missed the mark. Allow your sales language to sell, and empower your sales and marketing team to run that race for revenue generation.
I absolutely love this, and I've talked about it in my book. I've talked about it in my course that I do, and I actually just saw who was talking about it. It was Beck Holland. They have the Flip the Script tour coming up. They're talking about personal brands, and I've always said this, like, if your goal of you as a founder, your goal of your personal brand is to like leverage your vision and your impact, and it helps drive to the company because more people know you than the brand, and it helps kind of them see the
Right.
brand, understand what the brand is, and let the brand sell. Like, if your goal, whether you're a founder
Yes.
or an SDR, is to build a personal brand to get more meetings and sell, you're doing it wrong, right? It will help
Correct.
in the selling process, but it's all about your vision and like the credibility and the impact. And it doesn't have to be being a thought leader. It's just like you're putting it out there and you're engaging and you're being your authentic self,
Bingo.
and it will help drive back. But you need to let the brand have its own voice to sell, because your brand does that for you, and it actually relieves you of having to be like this hardcore salesperson all the time, and allows your brand to do the
It
work for
does.
you.
Now, here's how this works out tactically. Are you ready? So what this typically looks like, guys, is that you would have a corporate brand website, bobswidgets.com. That's the corporate brand, right? And that's where they sell the widgets, and the whole sales and marketing team are all talking to their customers to buy the widgets. Cool. All right. Or if you're in SaaS, it's this amazing platform and you're going to have people book a demo with you. Now, let's say Bob is the founder. Bob can have bobsmith.com, his own personal brand website over here. But to your point, what happens is Bob could have a consulting page on there that actually points back to bobswidgets.com. Or Bob could have a page over there that points back to the corporate work that he's doing over here. That is not to say that Bob, through bobsmith.com, can't get paid speaking gigs or write his book and put it out there. But you see how that's kind of separated. And all you need to think about when you write those brands is, are they in a similar type of tone of voice? Would I have the similar experience over here as I would over here? Cool, this feels really aligned then. The only caveat to this is, even for somebody like myself, I'm a full-time solopreneur intentionally. I do not have a team. And I actually transitioned from a corporate brand to a personal brand. I just have katedileo.com. Why? Because much to my dismay, nobody cared about my corporate brand. They bought me. They wanted me in the room. In a situation, if you are the brand, and you are selling yourself and consulting services, then yes, put all the eggs in the basket of just a personal brand and go for it.
I mean, I made that mistake, and I redid my whole website this year, and from doing that, I've scaled exponentially, and it took me a year of my own doing and sludging through to figure that out. And like that's okay, like that you get that that's okay. I needed that, but like it was funny because when I read your book, I kind of was like, fuck, like I was like, come on, Rob, you know this, you made this mistake and you fixed it. And it's like you could have saved yourself a year. Um, so I love that you brought that up and brought that full circle because it happens all the time, and it's something that I think
Yeah.
you know personal brand is so somebody who wrote a book on it and who does all kinds of talks and workshops on it. It's inflated right now, and everyone's trying to be an influencer and a thought leader and be like, look, my posts have all these likes, so you should listen to me. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, for me, honestly, I don't care if my post has one like or 50 or 100. Like,
Don't
what I
care.
care is the people that come to me and have conversations with me and are asking me questions, and we're having dialogue, and there's an impact there. My goal is not to be
Do you know what?
a thought leader. I don't.
Your highest equity is your relationships and network. And truly beyond that, Rob, is like, can you keep your head down and do good work? When I hear these people talk about, I have 1,000 followers here and 1,000,000 followers there, I'm like, what's your revenue? You can have the coolest personal brand in the world, but can we go back to dollars and cents? This is what's so interesting. Everybody wants a personal brand. But my question is, how are you monetizing it? And have you monetized it? And why are you monetizing it? Because you know what? If it were a corporate brand, you were sitting in front of a round of investors at this table, and you were going to investors and saying, well, our company has 3,000 followers, they'd be like, wah, wah, what's your revenue? What's fascinating to me is we're not asking the exact same question for personal brands.
100%.
What are you doing with it?
Many things, and that's what I'm saying. Is like so many people think they're trying to get it to like sell more for the business. Like that is missing the mark. and there's so much. I mean, we can go a whole deep into this topic, but I really want to highlight this because I talk about personal brand so much. And I think it's really important to understand like what does your personal brand do? What does your company brand do? How do you build those? Right. And the key to this is that there's so much out there. There's so many channels to be on. There's so many things to look at, and you talk about muting the megaphone. So I want to ask you this question: why did you say muting the megaphone? Like, what does it mean to mute the megaphone, and how do we tactically buy into that concept?
We are in the age of megaphone marketing. You're inundated with offers and features and benefits and and sales funnel pages that are bajillion miles long, and you don't know what to click, and there's just like overwhelm, right? Come on, you've ever gone to a website and there's so much crap out there, you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to click, right? And I think the thing is that in order for you to actually have a brand and a business that generates revenue and enables you to step into your purpose and live fully, you have got to be willing to say no to good and say yes to great. You've got to be willing to go silent and go deep. You've got to be willing to tune out what everybody else is doing for a damn second and really ask yourself, what am I here to do? And what is my path forward? In my life, it was interesting. I had a big personal journey and health scare that I talk about in my book that I had to mute the megaphones in my own life. All the so-called good advice, all the so-called best practices, all the coaches, all da-da-da-da-da. And I had to pull back and say, hold on a second. What is right for me? And what is I really trying to say? And what is the pain I solve for my customers? What if I just focus on that? What would that look like?
I love that. I mean, when I wrote my book and after I got done with it, I just posted an episode earlier about like why I got off LinkedIn for like 3 months. I literally just wrote a book on how to build a personal brand using LinkedIn. And then I was like, this got so like my LinkedIn feed and so much shit got toxic. And then I got imposter syndrome and there's all these things happening. And, after the book came out, like that was right when my grandfather passed away. There's just so much in my life. And I was like, what? I'm stepping back from all of this. I launched the book. I did all the things. I got to where I wanted it to be. I have plenty of business happening. I'm having great conversations from it. I don't need to be blasting out here, and I don't want to be a part of this toxic environment anymore. And I needed to like refocus on like what I do and the impact that I create. and like really double down on myself. And that, like, I needed that I had that same process that had to happen. And it was, and I think so many of us in this overwhelming megaphone world, it's easy to be like, oh, I don't stack up to that person or that person. It's like, you need to stop comparing yourself to others, because
Yep.
it comes down to dollars and cents. And like, you need to focus on you, and your journey is important because it's yours. It's no one else's. And it's a problem for a lot of people.
Great brands follow the principle of like attracts like. When you know who you are, when you know how you show up in the world, when you know the problem you solve and you own that and you stand in that with confidence, the right buyers are going to look at that and go, that's interesting. I want to have a conversation. The thing is that when you mute megaphones in your life, and when you mute the megaphone in your marketing and your branding, you are really in a position of power and confidence that you've never seen before. Because here's the truth, my friend, we are not in the business of convincing. We are in the business of converting. It is not our job to convince everybody in the world to like us and buy from us and hope that that happens. It is our job to convert the ones who see value in what we do. They heard our message, they like attracts like, and they go, yes. Our revenue growth hinges upon our ability to say no to good, to say yes to great, and focus on the ones who actually have the highest probability of buying. And for personal brands, it means you can't have FOMO. You can't sit here and try to create a brand like Seth Godin and hope that you're going to be him. You will never be him. Why are you on this planet? What are you trying to accomplish? And here's what's interesting. If you're listening today and you're going, I know I want to have a personal brand, but I almost don't know what that is. Good. Go silent, go deep, and put the thing on the back burner until you're ready. It will become very apparent when the time is right. Don't force a personal brand because some marketer's telling you to, until it's ready and the time is right.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you can do as you like are exploring that is, what content do you like to engage with? What are the things that make you happiest? What are the things that you're like, I want to make sure I like, if I see this post, like, oh, this is amazing, thanks so much for sharing, blah 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 blah. Start tracking that, and you're going to start realizing, oh, these are the things that I'm passionate about, right? These are things that I want to be
Bingo.
authentically talking about. And that helps. It's like, it's okay to mute all those megaphones and take that step back and just engage with the world, and think about what are the things you engage with that bring you happiness and joy, that you feel like, I can't stop talking about, right?
Exactly.
And so many of us are like so quick to like, I want to be the next sales. I was like, fuck that. Just because you're in sales doesn't mean you need to be a sales influencer. It could be all these other things. So I love that message. And I know we could go talk for hours, and we're out of time, but I really appreciate, this was so much fun. I love the tactical advice and all the things that you said. And where can my listeners find you? Where anyone out there is wanting, well, one, if anyone out there is listening, first, go pick a copy up of Muting the Megaphone. It is, I promise you, it is an easy read. Like, if you have a 2-hour flight, you can knock this out. You'll read it a couple different times because it's so tactical, and it's something that you can just kind of go back to. And I don't say that just like because you're my friend. I say it like genuinely. This was really great, and when I read it, it brought me back to so many things. But where can the listeners find you so they can get in touch with you, Kate?
Well, you know what? You can find me first off on LinkedIn. That's the only place you can find me on social media, by the way. So certainly find me if you're connected with Rob, or you listen to the show. Go ahead and find me, Kate DiLeo. And then, of course, if you're curious to learn more about this approach to branding and kind of the philosophy behind it, definitely feel free to take a look at my book. And probably the easiest way is just go right over to www.katedileo.com.
Awesome. I will make sure to have both of those linked in the show notes. Make it really easy on you. Go click, go buy, follow up with her. I promise that it is worth your while to connect with Kate and chat with her. Kate, once again, thank you so much for joining in. I really appreciate you, and congrats on for those that aren't listening out there that don't know this yet. For those listening, you recently just got married and tripled your family size. So congrats on that. Congrats on the success of the book. I know you've got some really cool speaking gigs coming up. So you should definitely check her out and see what she's doing out in the wild. It's super awesome. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thanks, Rob, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Bear Nation, thank you again. Make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, do all those tier 1 things. And until next time, stay well and rise up. Bare Nation, thanks for listening to the bare necessities of entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review.